A trained system will keep you comfortable and save you money. And remember, it's hard to stop a train. Holiday Plumbing, Heating and Air, 180 Joshua Court off Highway 27 East in Lincoln. Call 704-732-9238 and online at holidayhc.com. The anniversary celebration event is underway at Campers Inn in Kings Mountain. Huge savings on new and pre-owned RVs. And with every RV purchase this month, you get a $100 parts and accessory gift certificate. Bring the family, bring the kids. Every weekend in June, lunch is served free, plus fun and games. Pick up this week's What's Up Shopper for the special savings of up to $7,000. The Campers Inn, Highway 161 South at I-85 in Kings Mountain. Online at campersinn.com. Open 7 days a week.
Good morning, friends and neighbors. It's time for the Community Profile this Tuesday, June 16th, 2015. This is Milton Baker, along with co-host and executive producer of the Community Profile, Miss Sandy Alexander. Hi, Sandy.
Good morning, Milton.
Good morning to you. Temperatures on the warm side this week, this day, and going to be on the warm side for a while, but business goes on as usual, and we've got a good array of shows this week. We had a good show yesterday, and another good show scheduled today and tomorrow here on the Community Profile.
Yes, we do.
If you would introduce our guest today.
Okay, I sure will. It's good to have back Darrel, Harkey, and Dan Barefoot. We're going to be talking about the Battle of Ramseur Mill, and the anniversary's coming up, I understand, this coming Saturday.
When do you guys want to address that? The year was
1780.
Dan, 1780, yeah. And so we're celebrating the anniversary of the actual Battle of Ramseur's Mill. It was in hot weather. I don't know if it was this hot, was it, guys?
Hot and humid.
Hot and humid.
On a Tuesday morning, 6 a.m.
Yeah. Had it been rainy and cold, who knows? The course of history might have been different.
The gunpowder wouldn't have fired.
No, it wouldn't have. So, but Dan, I know you've spoken about these events in history, and could you kind of explain what led to the Battle of Ramseur's Mill and why it was such a pivotal, important battle in the fight for independence for the America then.
Well, on the day that it was fought, which was June 20th, which the anniversary is coming up Saturday, things were very bleak for the 13 American colonies. The war in the North was at a stalemate. Basically, as good a general as George Washington was, he had lost as many battles as he had won. In the South, the colonies had lost already Savannah and Charleston, the main ports of the South. And really, it was only North Carolina that was preventing Cornwallis from getting to Virginia and really a conquest of the colonies. So things were very bleak, and it took a stand of basically 400 colonists who were just men who came from their farms and their homes to fight about 1,200 men for the Tories or fighting for Great Britain. But they were all Americans there that day. Every man was an American.
Yeah, that's something, I had not realized until recently that there were no British troops at the Battle of Ramseur's Mill. It was all the patriots against the loyalists there, all Americans against Americans.
Really, it was a clash of cultures, basically. In this area, there were a lot of Germans and there were Lutherans, and the Scotch-Irish were, had come across the river, and Iredell and Rowan County and Mecklenburg and in eastern Lincoln County, and so it was really a clash of cultures in many ways.
Yeah, yeah. So you had neighbors fighting neighbors,
That's right.
family
Brothers
members
fighting brothers. in
Literally,
fact. Yeah,
literally.
literally.
I mean, you hear that saying a lot of times. Even in the Civil War, you hear the saying, brother against brother or whatever. But it was really true in the Revolutionary War.
One
too.
of the Simpson brothers, William Simpson, was on a scouting party for the Patriots, for the American colonists, and he heard that the battle had started, and he hurried back to Ramseur's mill as fast as he could. He fully intended, if he got there in time, to kill his brother Reuben, who was fighting for the Loyalists.
How about that?
Goodness.
So, Darrel, if you would kind of explain the where the Battle of Ramseur's Mill took place in Lincoln County area, and the terrain, the surrounding area. What was it like over 200 years ago? There were no highways, no places
Just
to
trails.
stop. Just trails.
Tuckasegee Road that led to Ramseur Mill that crossed the Catawba River near Belmont, came from Charlotte, and that was one of the main roads, probably the main road. And then the road from there led to Warlick's Mill. The town of Lincoln wasn't there. It would be 6 years later before the town of Lincoln would be formed. Over 6 years, 6.5 years later.
Yeah.
And but it was just maybe animal trails, Indian trails, wagon roads was all led, and then of course the Yorkville Road that led out of Ramseur Mill, which led to the York District and eventually on to Charleston.
Yeah. What kind of a mill was Ramseur's Mill?
It was a grist mill that's they made corn and cornmeal and flour.
And why that particular location? What made that particular location the spot that these people would come together?
Well, the roads, it was kind of like, where do you build a Walmart or a place like that, or McDonald's, where there's a high traffic area, and that's logical place was that all the roads, all the known roads or the good roads led to Ramseur Mill, and you get on the road and you would eventually wind up at Ramseur Mill.
Yeah. Okay. And Sandy, any comment?
It kind of sounds like a lot of roads today lead to
Really?
one central point. I know there's 6 points.
That's where they
There's
build
6
shopping
roads,
centers.
Yeah.
The places where the roads lead to.
To give you an idea of where the battle took place, if you know where Lincoln and High School is and the surrounding schools, they cover the actual battle site.
That was
They
the
are
battle
on a cemetery right now because there are a number of marked graves that are on the battlefield, but those schools were built on a cemetery.
That's
How about
the third largest non-church related cemetery in Lincoln County.
Yeah.
There's more people buried there than except for Forest Lawn and other than the church related cemeteries.
Now, Dan, when you say these schools are built on cemetery, they actually
really are.
they're actual people buried on the side of these schools under the buildings, so to
have.
speak.
In
Yeah,
fact,
really.
Because there's a mass grave site at the battlefield where probably up to 100 men were laid to rest, both colonists, all colonists, but those fighting for the crown and those fighting for independence. And they were laid to rest there because it was hot on June 20th. And men came from Rowan County and Iredell County. You couldn't take them home. There was no way to get them back home for the most part. So they were laid where they died, in effect. And when Darrel and I were on the Historic Properties Commission in Lincoln County, we had the commission to pay for, somebody to come there, an archaeologist, and he said the soil composition showed that was the mass grave site, and it was basically children playing on it, and the Historic Properties Commission had the grave marked, and
Yeah, it was in August the 9th, 10th, and 11th of 1991. We had hired Dr. Michael Baker. He came in, and when we did some soil samples and dug some test pits. And anyway, when we reached the point, Dr. Baker said, before he even sent the soil for analysis, he said that I've dug into enough graves that I know burial soil, decomposed remains of human beings.
Wow.
He said, I know it. When I see it, I know it.
Yeah, because these poor fellas, and I assume most were fellas, there may have been some women and children actually killed or were there at Ramseur's Mill because the families did go with, but that's a tangent I'm getting off on. But these poor people, they weren't buried in a coffin.
No,
they were just buried,
just
laid to
Wrapped
rest.
in a blanket usually.
Maybe, wrapped in a blanket.
And then with rocks and
nothing would.
If they had time, they would burn brush and stuff to try to kill the smell from the wolves and other animals from digging into the grave sites.
How deep a grave would you say?
Probably 4 feet. When we got down to 4, we were well past waist deep when I stood in the hole and Dr. Baker stood in the hole. It was up to probably chest high.
Would there be any remains at all?
No.
Clothing or
No.
nothing.
The-
Buttons or
it's
anything.
nothing that was found.
The acidity in the soil would have taken care of that.
Yeah. So nothing
The-
survived.
The reason the battle was fought at the site where it was fought, it is sort of a hilly area. If you climb above Lincoln High School, there were 1,600 loyalists there. 1,200 were armed, and they had grouped there in anticipation of Cornwallis invading North Carolina. They were preparing the area, but the people who were fighting for independence said, we're not going to allow it to happen. And so they marched from Little Mountain area all night, on the night of the 19th and the 20th, and got there early in the morning, very early in the morning. And Adam Reed, a local man from this area, told them about the terrain and the layout and everything. They immediately went on into the battle after marching 18 miles during the night from Little Mountain all the way to Lincoln to fight the battle.
Yeah, Colonel John Moore, who was in charge of the Loyalist, his home place is still partially standing. It's go down here to Walmart and turn left on Shoal Road, about the first or second place on the right. There's a log cabin, a lake down there. That's the old stagecoach stop, and the old stagecoach road cross. But and then Nicholas Welch, who was second in command, who had really a rank of major. I think it was a brevetted rank that he was given by the British Army. He lived just overlooking the bluff, overlooking the Indian Creek there, as you're going down the same road.
Sandy, it's amazing to hear these stories and what a wilderness area it really was back
really
then.
was.
And to try to imagine that it's really hard for me to get the scene in my mind without seeing a high school or a elementary school or something.
Really?
Something there. They weren't there. What was the terrain? Was it mostly wooded? Were there open areas for the battle, or how did the battle take place? Were you?
Well,
in
it's
the
pretty
woods?
well defined. We have Adam Reed had a sketch, but now the sketch was made 60 years after the battle, so you can imagine what was lost. There'll be so much lost, even how reporters do today, reporting on Super Bowl games, World Series games, how sometimes they're inaccurate on something. Now you're talking about a battle that's or a map that's 60 years old, but they built some fortifications on the north side, some breastworks. Of course, Clark's Creek and the pond protected them on the west side, and then there was a high hill and a fence coming from and a boggy swamp down, which is the bulldozers have taken care of the boggy swamp, and there's on the Lincoln side, if you're standing at the battlefield and looking towards Lincoln. So, and then the other road was the one that they were guarding, the old state road, the main road, the Sherrills Ford Road. It's 3 or 4 different names that people called it, but that's the way they came in, which is down Dixon Street, and they had some they had a couple of guards out 600 yards out from the main encampment, and they're the first ones that encountered the Patriots. Francis Locke and his men coming down the road. Gilly Falls was a captain. He was out in front, and he was immediately shot and died there on the spot.
He died in his son's arms. In fact, and his wife came back from Iredell County and did actually take him home. Although there are some marked graves on the battlefield, not just the mass grave, which is marked now, but there are some marked graves that have been there for some time. Probably the most prominent is the Whig captain's grave, or the captain's 6 Patriot captains died, and they are buried in a brick enclosure that was sort of beautified by the Daughters of the American Revolution and a Boy Scout project. And then the 2 main or important captains that fought for the Loyalist side, or the side favoring the British Crown, the Warlick brothers, they died along with their neighbor Israel Hussein, and their monument, or their original monument and their newer monument, is probably the most prominent or the first prominent monument that was built on the battlefield, and it is there. They died during the battle, and so magnanimous and brave and courageous was their fighting that Colonel Locke, who was the Patriot commander, he stood at attention while they were being laid to rest. Then there is also a grave marker for Captain or Martin Shuford, John Martin Shuford. He died right after the battle had finished. He was wounded in the battle and died. He was from the area of the Prison Camp Road in Catawba County, which then was Lincoln County.
Sandy?
When you said mass grave, my mind went to the Holocaust. They just dug and just threw people in there. Do you have any idea how many people, when you say mass, do you know how many were laid to rest there?
We know not exactly how many. We know upwards to 100 people died during the battle, and most of them were laid to rest there because they could not be carried home because
And
it would have to
how
be
long
about
how
like-
long a battle we're talking about? Is this something that lasted an hour, a couple hours, all day, half a day, or
A little less than an hour.
a little less than an
And
hour?
it wound up in hand-to-hand combat because it was so foggy. And another story, one of the things I did, I researched a lot, was the human side of the battle. And in fact, I wrote a paper on the human side of the battle, and people like Francis McCorkle. John Bowman was a sheriff in Burke County, and he was killed there. He was one of in the Whig captain's grave. And his wife, carrying a 2-year-old infant, rode a horse from Quaker Meadows, which is just slightly above, right in Morganton there, and rode a horse down because he didn't show up. And apparently it says he was killed instantly in the battle, but he did live long enough to provide a will. So we have a copy of the will, and but she couldn't take the body back, so she buried him there on the spot there. And she goes back to Burke County, and then she marries into the McDowell family. Now, anybody from Burke County knows about the McDowells, Joseph McDowell, and some the other famous. And of course, out of that family came the Tate family, and out of that family came the Irwins, and the Quaker Meadows Cemetery there. A lady named Eunice Irvin got that cemetery enclosed and got it on the National Register, and she was Senator Sam Irvin's sister. So Sam Irvin came out of that family.
Wow, it's just amazing. And when you're talking about neighbors against neighbors, et cetera, after the battle is over, after independence has won, what were the feelings like toward your neighbor who favored the British side? I mean, what were the feelings like? Because there's still descendants of those people living here today, and how did people get along afterwards when there were such hard feelings during the Revolutionary War, such hard feelings that they would even come to a battle like this?
Absolutely. Their tensions remained high, throughout the war. I think we ought to remember how important the battle was. In October of that same year, just several months after the battle at Ramseur's Mill, the battle at Kings Mountain took place. And on the monument at Kings Mountain, it has the quote of Thomas Jefferson, enunciating that Kings Mountain was the turning point of the war. Kings Mountain would have never occurred, had it not been for the decisive stand at Ramseur's Mill.
Yeah. Didn't the president, was it Jimmy Carter, the president who made mention of Ramseur's Mill in a speech somewhere?
Yeah, at Wake Forest. Yeah. I got that quote from Mercer Simmons and Judge John Friday. They were there when he said that freedom was born on a little hillside near Lincoln, North Carolina, a place called Ramseur Mill. And as Dan said too, and that's what I wanted to tell when Bob Inman was on, he said the turning point was at Kings Mountain, and any battle, any war, there's probably several places that you could say was a turning point. But as Dan said, the battle probably wouldn't have occurred, but if it had, it would have had a different outcome. Yeah. Because if you take away the South Fork boys, which Bob Inman mentioned, the South Fork boys wouldn't have been at the battle at Kings Mountain. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the Tories or loyalists that fought at Ramseur Mill, who went home never to fight again, would have also been at Kings Mountain to add to that number too. So Ramseur Mill was undoubtedly one of the turning points. Yeah.
But the South Fork boys and Major Chronicle who died at Kings Mountain, where were the South Fork boys from? They were from Lincoln County, because Lincoln County included all of Gaston and all of Catawba at that time. It was a huge county, and so they were all Lincoln County people.
Yeah, 1,800 square miles instead of 308 square miles.
Yeah, and in the history books, we've talked about this before. The Revolutionary War is so focused on the North and Boston, Philadelphia, and so how did it get into the South like this? There were battles going on in the South just as well.
That's why I say George Washington in the North had won many battles, but he had lost as many battles as he had won. For example, at Brandywine, we lost badly right at the Delaware River and allowed the, Valley Forge took place. We regrouped while the British actually took Philadelphia, the capital then.
Did I understand you to say earlier, maybe, I think I heard, the British were trying to advance through North Carolina to Virginia to the north, and
the rebellion would be crushed and the colonies would remain colonies of Great Britain.
How different things would be.
Right. One person, Darrel mentioned other people that fought at the battle that played a part in North Carolina history later. David Vance fought for the Patriots. His grandson was Zebulon Vance, who was governor of North Carolina during the Civil War and a Civil War soldier.
It's amazing. Yeah. All right. Sandy, anything?
I just find it also amazing that just down the road, I pictured that the school and the grave and in 1 hour, how everything could change that quick and be a part of history. I mean, I've always loved history myself, so it's got my attention. That's
one of the things that you can look at that I did some studies on was how you can compare the Revolutionary War and that period, what they were doing, to the 60s Civil Rights Act, the Civil Rights upheaval. The British made the mistake of burning Presbyterian churches, and if there was any one thing that infuriated and put the fire in the belly to the Scots-Irish and the Presbyterian, was the burning of the churches. And you know, in the 60s, when the Klan and others during the civil rights riots, they burned churches and bombed churches. A lot of people who were sort of neutral at that point, you know, or not necessarily neutral, but thought some of them were troublemakers, that that enough is enough. When they start burning churches and they start bombing churches and killing kids, then enough's enough. And America, white America, woke up on Sunday morning, and even those who was not in favor of the blacks getting equal rights suddenly changed their minds. And that's they made the mistake, and the Germans did that. They burned churches and burned people.
So history repeats itself. How's the saying about to know your history or you're doomed to
repeat it
or something like that?
One of the first distinguished visitors at the battle site, he actually invaded North Carolina in January of 1781, about 6 or 7 months later. Cornwallis decided he was going to try to subdue North Carolina. He came, and while the Catawba River was flooded, he stayed for about a week on the very site at Ramseur's Mill. And he surveyed the battlefield and saw what Colonel John Moore, what he did wrong and didn't do right. And it was while he was at Ramseur's Mill, he decided to lighten his load in order that he could try to catch Major General Nathaniel Greene, who was commanding the Southern Army for the colonies. And so at Lincoln, at Ramseur's Mill, Cornwallis decided to get rid of all expendable baggage that he could in order to try to chase Nathaniel Greene. Nathaniel Greene was in Charlotte. And when he heard what Cornwallis decided in Lincoln at Ramseur's Mill, Nathaniel Greene said, "Then he is ours." Now it took Guilford Courthouse, and then it took Yorktown and the surrender that took place in Yorktown in October 1781. The sword of surrender of the British Army was surrendered not to George Washington, but it was surrendered to a general named Benjamin Lincoln, the man for whom Lincoln County had been named for. So the quest for independence began, and it ended with the Lincoln.
In the Cornwallis papers, he wrote that the biggest blunder that he made during the war was burning his supplies. And Cornwallis himself wrote that.
How about
He called it a blunder.
a blunder?
Yeah, that's
colossal blunder.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I've learned several new things I didn't know about the fight for independence and the Battle of Ramseur's Mill in particular. And there's always more to learn. And there is a historic site set up out there. If you'd explain maybe just a little bit about it, it's a log cabin or two, and some other things, Darrel or Dan, what to remember this day and time, the Battle of Ramseur's Mill. What type of historic site do we have out there?
Well, while Darrel and I were members of the Historic Properties Commission, a lot of things took place. The mass grave site was marked, was found and marked.
There's not a playground on it anymore, is that right?
It's fenced off.
Yeah.
Audio station was installed. No longer works because children played with it too much. But we also reconstructed a log cabin that we found at the edge of what was Lincoln County, down near the South Carolina line, the edge of Gaston County. We also did a lot of other things that have really, we bought a lot of the bottom land that would have been gone forever down off the battlefield site, and we preserve that forever. So the Historical Properties Commission has done a lot to save the battlefield as much as it can.
And some people may be listening saying, well, why are you talking about this now? Didn't they do didn't they have a reenactment back in May? Well, yes, they did, but the actual anniversary, just to reiterate, the actual anniversary is this Saturday.
June 20.
Saturday. Yeah. So just some fantastic information and something everybody ought to dig more into and find out more about. It.
Yeah, we've had people call my office and want to know, how do I get there? And I'd ask them where they live. One lady called and said, I want to go to the battle reenactment. How do I get there? And I said, well, where do you live? She said, I live on the Startown Highway. She started telling me. I said, ma'am, if you would have lived there in 1780, you might have been shot.
Yeah.
I said, that's how close you are to the battle.
Yeah. And like I mentioned earlier on, back in those days, it wasn't safe to leave the women and children behind in many cases, so they went along with the soldiers, with the fighters.
Camp followers, right?
Yeah. And so, but no women and children were killed.
No. They were hiding they went across over where Carolina Hardware is, over there in a cane break, and they knew the battle was coming, so the women and children went over there and hid safely in that cane break.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
It is
well,
amazing.
Sandy, I tell you what, great, interesting program. Two gentlemen who know their history right here. And
Sure
sorry,
do.
Doug Mays couldn't make it today. We invited Doug, but he couldn't be here today. He's another schooled individual in history, no doubt. Well, guys, we thank you so much.
Thank
Mel,
you very much.
Could I do? I work I work at East Lincoln Speedway. I've been down there for 10 years, and from time to time I get some free tickets, and I've got 4 tickets, and I'd like to give to the callers that hadn't been to East Lincoln Speedway to see the race. A couple callers, give them 2 tickets, and please, if you get the tickets, please come and look me up, Darrel Harkey, and I will get you a VIP seat that we're overlooking the Speedway, and you will have the best seat in the house, and we'll take a couple callers and 2 tickets each.
All right, let's do that right now. Forgot about that. Thank you, Darrel, for reminding me. 704-482-1390, 735-8071, or 435-2844. Anybody that wants 2 tickets, we've got 2 sets of 2 to the East Lincoln Speedway. Darrel's got those tickets right here. And when is this good for, Darrel?
Saturday night.
Good for this Saturday night?
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the phones here and say good morning. You calling for the tickets?
Yeah.
Hey there, who's this?
This is Scott Fortenberry.
Sandy, will you write Scott Fortenberry down? Okay.
Yep.
Scott Fortenberry. All right. Scott, well, we got 2 tickets
What
for you
night
here.
they race on?
It's on Saturday night, correct, Darrel?
Yeah.
Saturday night. East Lincoln
Saturday
Speedway.
night. Never been to East Lincoln. We used to go to Gadsden up here. I live actually right beside the Cleveland County Speedway was for a while there, Thunder Valley.
All right.
Nothing there. How big is East Lincoln track? Ask that young man.
How big, Darrel? How big's the track down there at East Lincoln?
It's 3/8 of a mile.
3/8 of a mile.
3/8.
Uh-huh.
Good deal.
All
Okay,
right.
man.
Well, Scott,
Is that the tickets for this Saturday?
They're for this Saturday and today's Tuesday. I think I can mail them to Scott and get them there to you. If you'll hold on, Scott, we'll get your mailing address.
Oh,
and
okay.
we'll
Thank you a
mail
whole
you these
lot,
tickets.
Milton. Thank
All
you.
right.
Tell that young man I said I really appreciate it.
All right, hang on just a second there. All right, we'll put Scott on hold, and we still have another set here. We'll get Scott's address here off the air in just a moment. And got another set of 2 tickets here if anybody would like to go for this Saturday night. Like Darrel said, come down there, look Darrel up, and he'll get you in the VIP section. So just say, where's Darrel at? Where's Darrel? Or look for a man that looks like Darrel Harkey on the radio. All right, we got another caller coming in here. Hey there, who's this?
This is Perry.
Perry?
Yeah, how you doing, Milton?
Doing good, buddy. You want these tickets?
Yeah, I'd like to have them.
All right, Perry Powell, and we'll hold on for just a minute, Perry, and we'll get your mailing address and send these tickets to you. Okay, don't go away. I'm going to put you on hold. I think we lost Scott. I thought I had Scott on hold. Scott, if I dropped your call, my mistake, call us back, Scott, and we'll get your address and mail you these tickets, and we got Perry. So appreciate that, Darrel. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Glad to, yeah.
All right, folks, that'll wrap it up for the community profile today. Darrel Harkey, Dan Barefoot, our guest. And Sandy, tomorrow, show we've been looking forward to, like this one. We had this show scheduled
Oh,
for several
well,
weeks. Looking
yes,
forward to
it is.
this one, and we've had another show scheduled for several weeks. Been looking forward to talking to a young lady who is a Nashville recording
And
artist.
she is Tia Goins. We'll be calling in from Nashville tomorrow. And well, hopefully we'll get a couple of her songs thrown in so you can hear her and talk
Yeah,
to
I
her.
believe you got that frog that was in my
I
throat
think
earlier.
it jumped out of your throat into mine.
Okay. Folks, we thank you, and we'll see you again next time. Tomorrow, Tia Goins on the Community Profile.